Hi, Chris Paff from Chris Paff Tech Media LLC. We're back here, as we are in the Blue Room here at Norigin. I'm here with Shannon McKenzie, who's Director of New Products with NBC Universal. I've known Shannon for many years, and she's done incredible work within NBC in various kind of skunk works positions, working out of 30 Rock in New York City. And have recently reconnected with her in what is an interesting role that you have in trying to logicalize the huge number of services through workflow. And of course, you have a specialty in sports. So tell us what you're doing and also what you're going to present here at Northern Waves TV.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. So my role at NBC now, I work in content distribution, but really my main focus is content discovery. So that's putting the user first, making sure that people can find the content they love, that they want to watch, making sure they have a good path to navigation. But that's tricky, of course, because we don't necessarily have a direct relationship with the user. So the goal is to create really positive workflows and a supply chain that allows for both the expansive and divergent range of content that we share, but also the personalization of it as well. Making sure that platforms and providers have the toolkits that they need to be able to curate content in ways that are meaningful for consumers, and that also makes sense to the storyline and the products that we deliver.
Right, and this is really one of these moments in time where so much has happened within your company over the last 6, 7, 8 years, different acquisitions, different services, that you really have this unique challenge, but I think you're uniquely set up to address this, and particularly in sports.
I think so. I think we've certainly seen a shift in consumer behavior. The pandemic absolutely accelerated that. We saw the explosion of streaming services when people were home, but they also desired more content and more control over that content. And I think what you're seeing now is kind of a move towards some aggregation where you can actually opportunize the ability to showcase multiple stories in a way that's meaningful to a consumer. So at the end of the day, using sports as an example, that's a great one. You might be in America, for example, a fan of Sunday Night Football or the NFL, and we're able to introduce you now to Premier League and to NASCAR and to other things because we can kind of bundle that together in ways that make more sense for consumers, whether they're linear TV consumers and they want to see, you know, all the big events, or they may also want really specific events like a unique Premier League match. That's something that they can subscribe to Peacock, our streaming service, or try to look at things from a different way in terms of packaging so that people can get exactly what they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, and that's the end game.
And what sorts of things are you looking at? And you mentioned Peacock, of course, which is a huge undertaking, very successful. Came out in 2020, so you're now 3.5 years in. Mm-hmm. But that there's so much that's going on that you have to address, as you said. I mean, do you see, for example, your ability to do even a la carte offerings or something that might be a one-off, given what you know and what behaviors the consumer is undertaking?
Yeah, well, I think there's still some challenges just generally in the industry with legacy workflows, and that's really the evolution, you know, starting from film, then going to television, now going into streaming where you have different device types and sizes. So you have a lot of specifications that have changed, you know, things like that you would think would be quite normal, like being able to put artwork onto television. It might not be suitable or fit a mobile device where the end user is going to consume it. So at the end of the day, there's a lot to be done in the supply chain in terms of organizing and sort of wrangling all of our workflows and the efforts that we make, you know, all the way from the creative workflows down to the production workflows and the distribution workflows. And certainly at any big company, whether it's NBC Universal or any other large publisher, you have multiple brands, and those brands are competing with each other as well for eyeballs and attention and advertising dollars. And so you want to make sure that you do this in a way that really looks at the user experience first. I think that's kind of the critical component for us in content discovery now, is to say if we put the user first, eventually will please everybody in the supply chain because people will naturally gravitate to the content that they want. So that helps us kind of design from the end game backward. But it's still a challenge for sure. And
I can imagine, as you said, because you have so many moving pieces, and you mentioned, of course, not for nothing, a broadcast network, which has a lot of satellites, among other things. So let's talk about legacy. But what I love about Peacock is the user experience, the design is quite good. There's a lot of choice. I find that. And there's discovery there, but I think that where you're going in terms of things like AI or using multi-vendor approaches or cloud or multi-tenant, that all these things really matter in terms of trying to get greater efficiencies too, and that's part of your job.
That's absolutely right. And I think, as you start to structure these big things, certainly on the digital side, there's much more capability. People are more facile. Things move more quickly than on the linear side with, the traditional workflows of, old mezzanine video files and things like that. And so I think we'll start to see that kind of come together and coalesce. I think at some point, those workflows will get more systematized, looking at multi-tenant approaches, looking at modular design strategies as well, so that you can, the promise of AI is great. From the creative side, you always need a human being in the creative components, but from the production side, to be able to syndicate all of those different specifications on all the devices that have, unique specs and unique platform requirements. When you look at the list of requirements from, say, one device type to another, it's just so many, and it's really challenging. The standards have changed a lot. So I think we'll get there in terms of the consolidation, but I'm also really optimistic about having that sort of that modular approach and the ability to kind of plug in where it's relevant. In some cases, you don't need all the bells and whistles, and in other cases, it's really great to have them.
But that's a very design-oriented thinking that you have. And it's so cool that you're able to do what you do inside this massive entity. But by the way, if you need somebody who knows everything about connected TV, I know a guy, and he happens to be the CEO of Norigin, which is how you came to Northern Waves. But let's talk about the Nordic market and what you see or have seen, and how you feel there may be some learnings there and what you may have gleaned already from the event today.
Yeah, I think one of the things, the Nordic market and Europe generally, is less entrenched in sort of the industrialism that the United States has. I think for some, we've been very protective for all the right reasons of our workflows and our legacy industry, because it really has had a business model that has worked over time. But as the consumer approach has changed, I think we've been a little bit slower in comparison to Europe to change. And part of that is just we've maintained our infrastructure. And so we're getting to a place now where things like sports are starting to drive the innovation. We're starting to see the opportunities that, that happen, whether it's Europe or the Nordics, where they're doing very cool things already with legacy TV, with public TV, things like that. They're starting to integrate a lot of the digital principles into the legacy workflows. And I think we can take a page out of their playbook with that and really kind of start to evangelize that in the broader American market.
I totally agree. I mean, when you see some of the things like even the term BVOD, broadcast VOD, which seems contrapuntal, but if you, this morning's presentation from Knut Arne was just amazing, to look at that and see. I mean, we have NRK here as well, and they've got a lot to say. But since we're in the land of the Winter Olympics and all sorts of medals, and shout out to Oddvar Bro and his broken stick there for the cross-country skiers in the audience. But you're focused right now very heavily on the Summer Olympics, Paris 2024. Can we see some new things, do you think, that you may be trying out between now and next summer?
I think so. I think a couple things that you'll see. You'll start to see technology be more integrated into the storytelling. So we've done some really neat things. If you were a fan of Tour de France, we had some really neat interactive on-air graphics where the studio commentators were actually showcasing the strategy. And what I think that does is it helps to round out the storytelling for consumers who might be new to a sport or might not know the details. Certainly with big events like the World Cup, Tour de France, the Olympics, we do get the casual audience, right? We get I'm a fan of the event, but I might not really understand the rules around rowing or judo or something like that. Or we have new sports, surfing and skateboarding, right? And so it's helpful to have some of that technology start to drive the innovation, because as new consumers come in, that's how they learn about the sport. We found that with Premier League when we first brought it to the United States. You know, American audiences didn't really know what stoppage time was. They didn't know what a corner kick, how to relate to that. They didn't understand the difference between a yellow card and a red card. And so being able to bring in some of those elements through the technologies, whether they're on-air graphics through the storytelling or through the studio or in a digital device using that same framework, I think really helps to engender engagement, and it brings things to life a little bit.
I think, I mean, you've done an amazing job with that, because I know people personally who have become big soccer fans through EPL because of you. And I think that that experience, as you mentioned, engagement, is really intense. And we look forward to, obviously, what new things you can bring to bear. But, you know, I think that you've also looked at where individual sports can really help you learn about how to serve better on UX and UI design as well. Isn't that the case?
I think so. I think, you know, each of the sports has unique characteristics. And so you do need to know the event and understand the sport well in order to know what the user needs to know as well as what they want to know. So I think that does drive innovation, and the Olympics is, of course, the best use case for all of that. You can go back in history to, you know, Nordic skiing, but even to, you know, the innovation of Kevlar pole vaulting poles and things. You know, when you have big events like that, there tends to be just this rallying around the event. It's a tentpole event. It's a global event. They tend to get more budget, and so people are very focused on really driving that innovation, and I think that's critical.
And this will be a tremendous Olympics, because, of course, Tokyo was sort of the COVID Olympics, the almost didn't happen Olympics.
Yeah.
Still happened, great things as always, but it'll be a normal-ish Olympics, which will be very cool. Now, for those who don't know, Shannon was a pro tennis player, so we're in the home of Kaspar Ruud. Do you think he'll win a major in 2024?
He's got a very good chance. He's playing so well, and I think, you know, for him, it's always tricky at that level when you're right on the brink and right on the cusp, and I think it's that breakthrough performance that he needs. But he's hungry, and he's got the right attitude, and I think he's got a great chance.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's a great place to end. Game, set, and match. Shannon McKenzie, Director of New Products from NBC Universal. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.